few of you, I'm sure, might have heard me a couple of years ago when I said what I'm about to say. But our organization has been engaged in really thinking about how do we help convey the meaning of affirmative action, help people, especially at the state level, understand in the public what does this program mean, and how do we break down the myths and misconceptions. A couple of years ago, we engaged in a process where we looked at messaging, where we looked at research, where we talked to people, where we did focus groups, did this extensively, really trying to determine what were some opportunities, what are some ways for us to meet our end goal, which is to protect the tool, affirmative action, but advance the goals. And what we found was that, again, and this was a very hard realization for many of us who have been using this term for years and years. But when you use the words affirmative action and when you're talking with people in the general public, people stop. People know what affirmative action means. They don't need you to define it, right? They don't need to be told what it is. They have a perception. You can't change it because you've used a terminology where they're like, oh, I don't need to know anymore. I know what that is. What we found was to be able to get beyond that step, we needed to talk about values that we had in common, right? Values that go to what affirmative action does. Equality, equity, access, opportunity. And what we found was that when we talk about this issue as equal opportunity, when we use those value-based terms, value-based messaging to get that message across, we had a chance to have a conversation with that person and to help them better understand what tools are available to advance equal opportunity and access for all in their community. And so just going directly to the question that you had raised, that is something that we are doing when we do public education work on this issue. For many years, when we had to fight these state ballot initiatives, from Ward Connerly against affirmative action, we played in his sandbox. We had to play in the sandbox. We kept using the terms affirmative action. He kept calling it preferential treatment, and unfortunately, it has stuck. And so what we've tried to do is be proactive, get out of that sandbox, take back the issue, talk about the values that are at stake, and help people understand why it's still needed today. And that's what we've been doing. And what we found was in 2008, when we were really successful in keeping the majority of the initiatives that Ward Connerly was trying to qualify for the state ballots off the table. What we found was in the one state, the very first time we were actually able to defeat his initiative on a statewide ballot on an up or down vote, that campaign used equal opportunity across the board. And that messaging, that consistent messaging, we do believe was a factor in that victory. And so again, it's a challenging conversation for all of us who've been in this fight for so long, but I really want to challenge us, not only on this issue, but for other civil and human rights issues. We really are trying to challenge ourselves to use value-based messaging and think about where's the common values that we can talk about, especially when we're talking to the general public.
Thank you. I remember, and then I'm going to turn it over to the audience. We do want to hear from you. We have about 25 minutes where you can just put your questions out there. That's a lot of questions. We want to hear them. I remember, how many people do we have here today from the casino industry? Actually, from the casino industry. Okay, about 3, 4, 5. I remember back in the mid-90s when I sat on the commission. I guess this really happened maybe 92 or 93. There was a part of the law that they had to do so much business with women and ethnic minorities and the whole 9 yards. Or they had to be found at the time of licensing, the hearing, had to be found to have acted in good faith. If they had acted in good faith, then they weren't going to be held to the standard of being out of compliance. This little short commissioner couldn't really understand, couldn't get her arms around, why is it you have to be in compliance with the fiscal stability rules, you have to be in compliance with the games had to be lawful, you had to be in compliance with the operations, but you could be found in good faith when it came to this other portion, and it was all in the same law. So I began to ask people the question in the industry, what's the problem here? We can't find it. We can't find women business owners or minority business owners. They're just, Commissioner, they're not there. We hold all kinds of fairs and we go on the show, on the road show. They're not there. So I said to the chairman, I got a surprise for you at the next meeting, public meeting. And I announced from the podium that I, as one commissioner, would no longer vote in the affirmative to grant the license to the casinos who couldn't demonstrate to my satisfaction that they had made a real effort to comply with the law as they had in the other areas. That no longer we can't find them would be acceptable. Well, the press went crazy, the commission went crazy. They're like, oh my God, did she say this on the record? She said it. What do you think happened? They found them. They found lots of them. I mean, we have people here who worked in, Marvin who actually worked in the Affirmative Action Unit, and we have folks, Joyce, who actually was the Affirmative Action Officer in the casino. They began to find people. And my point is, back then there was this process where there were incentives and a little pain if you're out of compliance. Things have really changed in 2011. It's very, very different. So the question that I want, a final question I want to ask our panelists, since we don't have that carrot and stick, do you think we will ever get to the position in our lifetime that there will not be a need for an affirmative action program because we have figured out how to level the playing field and we have found a way to bring balance into the workplace? Anybody want to tackle that? My brother here?
You know, that is it's a simple answer, and yet it's a human striving answer. I mean, you know, will ever be removed? So maybe I'm sure your kids and your grandkids could care less about race. Their friends look like the United Nations. They play, they go on trips together. That's encouraging. They don't care about race. I think that's our only hope. And I think as long as we kind of, especially the messaging in the home, how we communicate to them about the past, how we communicate with them about the present, and you encourage them to uphold these ideas of progress that you see through the hard work that you and your forefathers paved the way for in the fight for civil rights, and equal opportunity for everybody. The hope lies in our children. And I think if you look at our kids today, I think we have a pretty bright future. How far are we from that moment? I don't know, but I think the prospect that it could happen someday, but it lies in that generation that we bring forward now.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Ron.
My answer is no. And the reason the reason I say that is not because I don't think America is a wonderful place, and it's not because I don't think children are wonderful, but there's evidence. There's evidence that there are some sicknesses in America that need to be addressed. Go to the Harvard website and look up the Project Implicit Study, which has been going on since 2002. Common, ordinary, good-natured Americans have taken the test thousands of times. And the test shows that white Americans, and I'm not talking about members of the Ku Klux Klan, but just people on the street, 75 to 80% prefer other white Americans over black folks. That Americans prefer young people to old people, that they prefer straight people to gay people. And these are the folks who feel that they don't have any biases. Now, I don't think that that means that we're a sick society, but I do think it means that we have some things that we need to work on that are unacknowledged. And I don't see that changing overnight. And I think that one of the things that affirmative action policy can help with is dealing with the way that people are treated badly in unacknowledged ways.